Hi, everyone. Today I'm speaking with Fiona MacKinlay about her experience of working with cancer, about the coaching she received from us, and what advice she would give to others about supporting people managing work during or after cancer treatment. So lovely to see you, Fiona, this
Lovely
morning.
to, lovely to see you too, Barbara.
Perhaps you could just start by introducing yourself and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Fiona MacKinlay and I'm a cancer survivor. I'm married with two children and I work full time as a higher education professional. I work in one of the UK's largest universities where I've been since year 2000.
Excellent. So can you tell us a little bit about the organization, how it works?
So I'm a head of professional services within one particular school, and across the organisation we have like four big colleges. As I said, we're third largest in the UK, and I am responsible for all the professional teams within my area in terms of dealing with all the strategy and operationalisation. Not an easy word for me to say. And really supporting all the students and the academics. And in essence, that kind of it's a business partnering role that I have, and I've got a team of about 50 that I line manage. So a big,
A big job.
it's a big job, yes.
So look, tell us about your cancer diagnosis and treatment and how you're doing.
So in mid 2017, I was diagnosed with kidney cancer. And it was actually following a routine test for something completely unrelated. I remember I went for an ultrasound and the radiographer was spending quite a bit of time, kind of around my middle. And I thought, oh, what are you doing? Because I had no symptoms, nothing. So I then got a phone call from the consultant who had referred me for the test to say, going to send you to urology to get it seen because the scans picked something up. And then I remember the consultant said to me, I mean, you're like the third woman that I've spoken to this week where they found something and it turned out to be cancer. And I was like, all right, oh, okay. And I thought maybe it's just a cyst. So anyway, went to see urology, sent for CT scan. And then I remember getting called in, and there was no specialist nurse at that point in with me. It was the consultant. And I remember he had a trainee sitting in the corner looking a bit miserable. And the consultant said to me, yes, well, I mean, you've got kidney cancer. I mean, it's a 5-inch tumor, size of a tennis ball, quite big. So basically, we will just take you in. You get a full nephrectomy. And I said, but I don't know what that is. Oh, we'll take your left kidney, completely remove it. And then, yeah, just that'll be it, really, because we can't give you chemo or radiotherapy because it's too big and it won't work. So have you got any questions? And I went, oh, and I thought I really didn't know how to deal with it. My husband just sat there dumbfounded, and the trainee was like, he didn't know how to deal with it. So then after
That's
that,
extraordinary, Fiona. That is unbelievable.
I was just like, pardon? And he's like, yeah, operation in 3 to 4 weeks. You'll be fine. Have you got a holiday booked? And I was like, well, I'm due to go on holiday in a couple of weeks. Is that okay? Oh, yes, just take your tumor on holiday with you. And I remember thinking, I've just been given a diagnosis of cancer, which to me meant death. Because I'd lost my own father to prostate cancer 3 years previously, and I'd seen what it was like to go right the way through to the very end. So to my mind, I thought, sure, there's some mistake. So anyway, I remember I was, sent off, and I actually took 2 months to get the date for the operation because there was such a backlog in the NHS at that time. And I remember when I went to get my pre-op with the same consultant, he said, right, so we'll do all the forms, etc. And then at the very end, he was like, oh, I've forgotten something. So he gets his pen and he writes down, yes, I need to add something to this. And he wrote down the word death and then underscored it and said, I mean, you could die. But and it was like, and then he was like, so sign here, and he gave me the pen, and I thought, well, I don't have a choice. I have to sign this, or I don't get it. Anyway, I then luckily had a completely different consultant who did the operation. Amazing individual, never had such, bedside empathy before. that went fine. I was in hospital for a week, and then the pathology came back to say that I had actually quite a rare subtype of kidney cancer called chromophobe. And there's only 5% of all kidney cancers that come into that. So that was kind of what I got. And then it was the care plan of you'll be getting 6 monthly scans for 2 years. And then after that, it'll be annual up to 5. And then on to ultrasound for life because of my young age. And it was the only time that I felt that I was still relatively young in my mid-40s. Because everybody else who I was in along with, the waiting room were a lot older than me. So I tried to see the funny side of it. So anyway, at present, I've had my last CT scan a few months ago. So I've got NED, so no evidence of disease. And then next year I'll go on to ultrasound. My kidney function's taking a little bit of a dip at the moment, but they're not too concerned about that. But of course, anytime that happens, I think, oh, what's wrong with the kidney? Is it okay? But I'm learning how to cope with it, basically. So that's kind of where I am today.
Wow. Okay. What a story. What a story. So how long were you off work for in total?
7 months, because when I actually got the diagnosis and then I had to wait the 2 months for the operation, I think it just floored me. I think that whole what's happening to me, and I'd been having quite a challenging time in work anyway in terms of coping with workload. And because it had felt like a slow motion car crash is the only way that I can describe it up to the point of diagnosis, I just went to pieces. I just said I can't go back to work. I can't face it. I can't be the leader that people need me to be because I need to be able to focus on myself.
Yeah.
So as I said, I was off for then, and then 5 months post treatment. So yeah, in all about 7 months.
Okay. So what were and maybe still are the main challenges you faced in managing your work and cancer?
I think both physical and mental and emotional. I mean, aside from having the sort of major surgery, I actually found the mental and emotional impact worse because I hadn't anticipated how traumatic I would find the whole experience. And I think when it came back, around returning to work discussion, I felt like I was hit by a tidal wave of a complete loss of confidence. I was meant to be a leader out there leading the teams, supporting my staff, delivering the strategy. But inside, I just felt I was crumbling. And I think I also put myself under pressure because there was the challenges of what people expect from me, but also what I expected of myself, the should. And certainly the should was, really problematic. You should be better. I mean, you only had surgery, whereas I would go, it doesn't matter what treatment you get for cancer, it's awful, full stop. It's not a competition to see who's had it worse. So there was that. I really struggled with that aspect. I think I struggled with the notion of how was I going to be able to do my job. But then it started to evolve into, do I really want to do it? Is this what I want to do with the rest of my life? I'm not sure. I then started to feel a lot of pressure. I need to know what I want to do with the rest of my life. I've been lucky. I've survived. There are people in worse situations than you. And I thought, I don't want to be compared to anybody else. I'm me. And we're all different.
Absolutely.
So there was that in terms of having been away for work for so long. And then obviously things go on without you, and then you return. And I limped, that's what I would use. I limped back to work, and I did my best to put a smiley, confident face on, and just to try and get on with it. And I think I was also afraid, was my employer, which they never said, but I was worried that they were going to turn around and say, you can't do your job as well as what you used to. So actually, do we need you any longer? And I absolutely was convinced that was what was going to happen. So I wanted to almost like prove to others that, oh, here's Fiona back singing and dancing. And I wanted also to be careful that it didn't come across that I was wearing a I've had cancer badge. You know, because I was conscious that there were people who were really happy to see me and who would chat, but there was plenty that just they didn't want to talk about it. It was like, oh, don't mention it in case it upsets her. And I get it because it's very, very difficult, I think, for others around to know what to say and how to approach it.
Yeah, that's
So,
often a common problem that people have. It's like
yes,
better to say
definitely.
nothing when
Uh,
actually that's really not better at all.
well, exactly, and I think as well, for me, there was my perception was it was a complete lack of awareness in how to support someone who'd
Mm.
had a cancer diagnosis and who had now returned to work, and I felt very, very alone. I mean,
Mm.
I was referred to occupational health. They were helpful up to a point, but again, there wasn't anything even for my manager to be able to refer to know how to support and work with me.
Mm.
And the focus I felt was definitely on the physical element.
Yeah, not
Um,
understanding the psychological impact that
yeah, there
cancer
was
has.
nothing. And I don't know whether there's still an element of that it's taboo. Maybe it's too strong, but there's an element of it being taboo to talk about cancer in the workplace.
Yeah, yeah.
When there are so many people that, do get it to varying, degrees, but at the end of the day, it's still cancer. And they know that they have to continue to work, for whatever personal reason.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it was just, well, so what do we need to do? So you've got fatigue, yes, right, okay, so we know about that, and you need lots of toilet breaks because you've got to drink lots of water, right, okay. There was nothing about the load that I was going to take back on and
Yeah.
how I could possibly cope with it when I just didn't have the mental capacity to do it.
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
But I think the other thing as well I would probably add is even though now I still get sight pain occasionally, and I still get scanxiety, as we call it. I don't think
Yeah.
anybody ever manages to breathe into a scan and not feel anxious about it. I think as well, every day I still have a little thing about that it could come back. And I don't think, again, that ever leaves you,
No.
but you learn how to manage it.
Yeah.
So I think that as well, but also the perception, certainly the longer that you're back at work, oh, that was ages ago that you had it, and look, you're fine, you look well, you know. So, and here's more work for you to do, and and you're too afraid. Well, certainly I was too afraid to go. Just a minute, I'm not feeling like that because it was all about the needs of the business.
Mm. Yeah.
That's what I felt it was about. It was meeting the needs of the business. And if I couldn't meet the needs of the business, then perhaps I needed to think about doing something else.
Yeah, very tough, and that experience is, not to underplay it. That experience is so common. Employers just and families too. They want to move on. Okay,
Yeah,
so you
yep,
had cancer last year. That was a year ago.
yep.
Well, actually,
Oh, absolutely. And I don't know whether part of it also comes down to them thinking about their own mortality, that people don't want to hear about the stories about people who don't make it. They want to hear the stories about people who do. And it's like, as long as you look okay and you look happy, then that's fine, you know. And it's that, but like I said earlier, cancer isn't like having the flu. It's not like that a few weeks of bed rest, watching daytime TV and then, you're back up and running. It doesn't work like that. And I think it's a unique experience to everybody.
yeah,
You
absolutely,
know,
and has an enormous impact, as you say, psychologically, which very few people understand. So,
absolutely.
so what led you to approach us for coaching support, Fiona?
So it's interesting. I actually found, I remember I was doing a search on the internet around, working with cancer because I thought, it was about 18 months after I'd returned to work and I'd been sort of plodding on. And it was like, again, this huge wave of the trauma really hit me and I was full of self-doubt and I thought, I have to do something about this. I mean, obviously, I got a little bit of support with other cancer charities, but that was more around the cancer itself, it wasn't so much about how do I as an individual return to the workforce and reestablish that part of who I am as part of my identity. So I did an internet search, and I came across working with cancer. And I remember that I reached out to you, and you and I had an initial first meeting just to have a chat. And immediately I just thought, oh, someone who gets it, totally understand, what it's like. Because no matter when you have that experience, it stays with you. And I just felt so at ease. And then when you were able to talk to me about what support could be offered to me, I just thought, what, I'm really anxious about this. I'm very nervous. I've never had coaching before, but you know what? I'm gonna give it a go. And my employer actually agreed to fund a few coaching sessions. So you matched me up with Fiona Simpson, and she and I just clicked immediately. It was that notion of I could really be myself, and I felt immediately at ease, and that I knew I was doing the right thing.
Good. So how do you think the coaching helped you cope with the challenges that you were facing at work, Fiona?
I think I know that I was able to freely discuss how I felt, and that I was actually being listened to. I wasn't being judged. I was able to really offload and be honest, maybe in a way that I hadn't been with other people, because you're conscious about that people want you to be strong and look at you, you're much better now. And I think for me, the coaching helped me identify what was really important to me, and to articulate the challenges that I was facing. And I could work through my feelings. So over a kind of number of sessions, I was able to actually reconnect with myself and fathom out how to exist in the new normal. I know people, kind of, you hear the phrase coined a lot, certainly, as the pandemic. But I think when you go through your cancer diagnosis, you have to learn the new normal. And being at work is part of that new normal. So I felt I was actually able to rebuild myself with coaching, reprioritize, and address some of the feelings that I had. Like I was an imposter, I was a fraud, that they would find out that I wasn't actually good at my job. Because for me, cancer robbed me of my confidence. But through getting coaching with working with cancer, I have rebuilt that confidence, and I've been able to take control. And I think as well, explore more about how to manage my work, how to manage perceptions of others, but also take my experience of cancer and turn it into a positive one, because yes, it was awful. And I was the lowest I'd ever been, but rebuilding myself has given me that strength. And I absolutely got that with coaching. I wouldn't be where I am today if and I'm being honest here, I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't without getting coaching through working with cancer.
Well, that's amazing.
And one of the things that really came out was, this is my life and these are my choices. And it helped me regain my strength, keep going and never give up.
Brilliant. That's so good to hear. So from the experience you've had, what would you say has been, what have your employer or your colleagues done that's been most helpful, would you say?
I think most helpful, certainly, when I returned, I thought what was really helpful was, apart from obviously getting coaching, some funded coaching sessions working with cancer, they ensured that the person that had been covering my role while I had been away, they kept them on for a few months as part of my phased return, so that I was able to slowly, start to take on a load again. So I thought that was very, very helpful. I think even just things like people being kind to you and just saying, it's lovely to have you back, and trying to make you feel part of something again, asking your advice. I think that really helped me. I mean, obviously, I went to occupational health as well. and that helped up to a point. But again, they cover a full breadth of occupational issues, not sort of specifically cancer. So I think those are probably the main things that really helped.
Okay, so what advice or top tips would you pass on to others in your circumstances, Fiona?
I would say definitely reach out to Working with Cancer. If you get a coach, someone who you can speak to and be honest and be yourself and just offload, and have that someone who's not a friend or a family or a work colleague who can really help you to work through how you feel. Because a lot of the times I think we do have the answers and the solutions within us, but we need that help to find them. I think another thing I would say is health comes first. I know it probably sounds rather obvious, but I think particularly when we're so busy at work, and or we've got a family as well, other responsibilities, we often put ourselves last, whereas health is paramount, because without that, you're nothing. You won't be able to do what you need to do. I think also accept that cancer will change you, and that's okay. And I think learning to do what's right for you, because everyone's different. Some people want to be able to talk about their experience and others don't. And again, do what's right for you, but make sure you ask for the help when you need it. And I think enjoy the little things in life. I mean, I know I certainly do now in a way that, I didn't used to, but now I will. I'll take great joy from that. And I think as well, when you're back at work, be aware that there will be periods of stress that you'll hit, and it might come out of the blue, or it might be that you're maybe going for a checkup, or you've got another scan, or you hear about somebody who's died from cancer, whether it's the one you had or not, and that it's okay not to be okay. I think also managing the perceptions of others, and focus on what you can control, because you can't control the behavior of other people, but you have to think about when people have particular perceptions of you, for example, it's what actually lies beneath them being like that. And often it's not really about you, it's about them. I'm kind of conscious I've got a big list here, but I just want
That's
to
a
make
good
sure
list. It's a good list.
I've only got a few more. So I think take your time and be in no rush, because ultimately the race is actually against yourself anyway. It takes time to adjust to the new reality, and that whole I need to know what I want to do with the rest of my life, and you will see people in the press who have had a life-changing experience and then give up their job and go and conquer Mount Everest. And that's fine if that's what they want to do. But actually, if you want to just quietly resume your life and maybe change a few things, that's okay as well. You don't have to go and conquer, or tour the world or whatever because you've had cancer. If you weren't going to do it before cancer, does it mean you want to do it now? No, not really. I think my last two things would be kind to yourself and avoid the should. I should do this. I should be able to do that. And then I think also the final thing would be accept that some colleagues will be happy to see you and will be quite comfortable talking to you about what you've been through, but also there'll be others that won't. And I think at the end of the day, most people in work, I think, are just trying to be kind and helpful, and they're doing their best. So if maybe sometimes they don't quite say things that are that helpful, you learn to manage it.
Yeah. People often mean well, but they may just say the wrong thing, not through any ill will, but just
because. Absolutely.
You just have to kind of do your best when you get asked silly things or people
exactly. You perfect the my own
and move on. Stuff. Excellent. Some really great tips there. So, and what sort of advice would you pass to employers then, Fiona?
Okay. So other than the obvious one for me, which is reach out to Working with Cancer, because you're not just there about supporting the employees, it's also to work with the employers. Because I think a lot of employers really are at a loss as to what to do. So and they almost don't know where to start, because again it's the C word. so I think they need to be able to get that guided help that they need. I think an employer needs to listen to their employees, because, like I said earlier, getting a diagnosis isn't like having the flu, or a tummy bug. And it often takes, a cancer diagnosis for an employee to actually face their mortality for the first time in their life, and realize that getting a diagnosis for an employee doesn't just impact them physically, but also mentally. And be prepared that that employee may have periods of further anxiety, such as the checkups, etc. And but also maybe talk to the employee about what are the sort of behaviours that they might demonstrate when they are going through that period of anxiety, because then you'll be aware and be able to work with them, I think, in a better way. I actually do also think that they should have, create a working with cancer toolkit, because and also a lack of training for managers. I think they need to have that. I mean, in the same way that it's great now that many employers are, having training courses on managing menopause in the workplace, which is well overdue. I also think that they should have something like that for working with cancer, because they just, well, certainly my employer doesn't have anything like that. It didn't have it at the point in time, and still doesn't have it. And I think that would then needs to link in with things like, the equality and diversity, and understanding that the employee who's had that diagnosis is then considered disabled for life. So therefore, how can you work with them to actually enable them to do their best work? So those would be the main things that I think we need to focus on.
Yeah, and I think all of those things act to kind of retain people who you've invested a lot of time and trouble in. It's great for morale when employees see that somebody's being treated really well.
Absolutely.
So, Absolutely. In kind of commercial terms, it has enormous benefit as much as anything else, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I would absolutely agree with you, because, that whole, you've got that employee and they have built up a wealth of experience, and that talent is still there, but it's very, very costly to an employer to then lose somebody who's got that and then go through the whole recruitment, process again, and the training and trying to retain them. And there's a lot of talk, I think, as well about, the kind of the psychological contract that people have with their employers. And it is about things like being, what's your purpose? And are you part of a community? And also, like, what are your career prospects? But also accepting that perhaps, individuals who have got cancer or are now in remission, they might have slightly different career aspirations from people who have not been through that. And that's okay.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And there are lots of ways people want to rebuild their lives after cancer.
Yes.
A few people give up work or do something else. But I think it's important to recognize when you confront a life-threatening illness that it's going to impact people emotionally, and they may want to do other things to enrich their life.
Absolutely. And even for an employer to think, okay, so maybe the role that this person then is, now is maybe not what they're wanting to do, but this is still a talent that I could potentially retain. So actually, what are the opportunities? What are the skills that this person has got? But also, I actually think it's that whole, recruit for attitude and train for skills. So if the person's got the right attitude, actually, then I think that's about really tapping into that. So these are the things that I think would be really good for them to focus on.
And are any changes you'd like to see here in the UK to help people manage work and cancer?
I think there needs to be more around, the kind of the phased return piece, because it does seem to vary very much from employer to employer. So like my own employer, while it's up to occupational health to kind of work with the employee, they're still quite clear it's to be no more than 4 weeks. And I think when you're dealing with something like returning to work, having had cancer, 4 weeks is nothing. But because I can understand it from the employer's perspective, there's a resource, there's a cost involved in that. But equally, I think that the UK has to look more into that in terms of supporting both the employer and the employee, because I think there's too much variation.
I think 4 weeks is, in my view, I think 4 weeks is unreasonable. You know, you're
Yeah,
entitled to adjustments under the legislation, the Equality Act. I
yes,
think expecting anyone or most people, because we're all different,
yep,
expecting most people to be able to get back to work successfully full time after 4 weeks is an unreasonable requirement, in my view.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I would agree, because I had to use up some annual leave to try and have, extend my phased return. But eventually I ran out of that leave, so I had to go back. And that was, I felt there was a real pressure on me to get back up to working full time quite quickly,
Mm,
which I really, really struggled with. And
mm,
I think also the UK, I think, needs to raise greater awareness and understanding about that. Yes, there's the reasonable adjustments, that you're entitled to ask for them,
mm.
but also be aware that I think there are employers out there that will say yes, but I don't have to because it doesn't meet the needs of the business. And it's like, look, we really have to have a proper dialogue here. It shouldn't be people are at loggerheads with their employer, um, but it's how does an employee get that protection? I mean, and I understand it can be really challenging from an employer's perspective, but I think the UK as a whole needs to do something a bit more about that. And I think the UK needs to give a similar focus to cancer in the workplace, the same way that it is done with the menopause.
Yeah.
I mean, the menopause, the focus absolutely deserves it, but where is the focus on cancer?
Yeah.
I,
I think
I
it's really, I think it's really interesting. I mean, clearly, 2 years ago, no one, 3 years ago, nobody was talking about the menopause. I'm
Yep.
afraid to say things come in and out of fashion.
Yes.
And cancer's been around a hell of a long time, as has the menopause.
Yes.
But I would say this, wouldn't they? But I do believe cancer is rather more debilitating than the menopause, and rather more life-threatening.
Hmm.
Say that it can't be incredibly tough for some women keep coping with the menopause, and I still have many of the symptoms of it, still get hot.
Yeah.
But I think
Absolutely.
cancer is such a challenge, both for the individual and their employer.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely. I mean, in my workplace, they have like menopause cafes, and they will run sessions for staff, but there's nothing on cancer.
yeah,
We've maybe had some sessions about like hidden disabilities, in the workplace, but again, it's that we need to do more. And
yeah,
I think as well, again, linking with the menopause thing, I mean, the government was happy enough to kind of, have a menopause employment champion to improve workplace support. Well, where's the equivalent for cancer?
yeah,
It's not there.
yeah, absolutely. Hey ho. Thank you. Those are really, really good observations. Finally, is there anything else you'd like to add that you think is relevant for those listening to this interview today, Fiona?
Um, just a couple of things. I mean, I think at the end of the day, what I have talked about in this interview is my own personal experience, and everyone's will be different.
Yeah,
Um, and so it's not a one size fits all approach that works when you return, to work following cancer. And my final thing would just be to reiterate: remember, this is your life, these are your choices, and you're probably a lot stronger than what you think.
Thank you, Fiona. That has been so, so helpful.
No,
Um,
thank you, Barbara.
it's been absolute pleasure, and I'm sure many others returning to work with or after cancer will find your advice immensely, immensely helpful.
I
I,
hope so.
well, I'm sure they will. I'm just going to share my screen now, just to give some details about working with cancer. So I just wanted to say that this interview has been recorded by Working with Cancer. If you would like to find out more about our services, please get in touch with us, either via our website at workingwithcancer.co.uk or contact admin@workingwithcancer.co.uk or call us on 07910 835 585. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and thank you again, Fiona.
Not at all, Barbara. It's been my pleasure.